Hello and thank you for joining us today for Thrive London and the Mayor of London's Peer Outreach Team's World Mental Health Day Festival 2021. And thank you for joining this panel discussion, the first for today's Never Alone London speaker event. My name is Otegha Uwagba. For those of you who don't know me, I am an author and culture journalist, and I'm really excited to be chairing today's discussion and to be joined by a really fantastic panel. I am going to let them introduce themselves in just a second, but just to give you a bit of an insight into how this conversation is going to work, we're going to be talking today, it's all about how we work to build a culture of tolerance, anti-discrimination and equality within London to further build our connections and a sense of community. It's a really big topic. There's a lot to cover in the next hour, and I know that everyone here is going to have an opinion on this. So I very much encourage you. I know that we're all kind of sitting up here and it feels a little bit distant, but I really want this to be as interactive as possible. We're going to have a roving mic. So if you at any point in the conversation want to ask us a question, want to, voice your opinion, whatever, just put your hand up and someone with a mic will be coming to you and, just getting your take on it as well. And then we will have 15 minutes at the end of the discussion for more of a formal Q&A. So if you've kind of got something that you want to say at the end, there'll be plenty of opportunities for questions. And wherever you're watching this conversation, you can join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag NeverAloneLondon. That's hashtag NeverAloneLDN. So let me start by welcoming our illustrious panel today, and I will ask them each to introduce themselves really briefly and tell us a little bit about what they do. So why don't we start with you, Sanah?
Sure, thank you. Really excited to be here with you all today. My name's Sanah, Sanah Ahsan. I am a psychologist, a liberation psychologist, a poet, a presenter, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because an area that I'm particularly interested in at the moment is deconstructing whiteness in the field of psychology in the therapeutic world. And one of the things that I'm doing is building anti-racism as a core competence into the training program for upcoming clinical psychologists. So it's something that I'm really thinking a lot about. So I'm excited.
That's fascinating. Definitely want to get into that. And now on to Jonas.
As you can tell, I'm quite young. I'm 19 years old, but I like to call myself an educator, entertainer, and entrepreneur. So that consists of public speaking, facilitating workshops, hosting events, also acting and presenting too, while running my business also and volunteering for amazing youth organizations to aid young people for the better. And yeah, I'm extremely happy and honored to be in the presence of such amazing people on this panel and an amazing audience as well. So hopefully.
Here. And you, Kelsea.
Hey, I'm Kelsea. Does this work? This works. All right, let me start again. Hey, I'm Kelsea Delatango. I'm from London, South London to be precise. I am a peer outreach worker. I do research at Partnership for Young London. And when I'm not doing that, I'm producing a bunch of different stuff, kind of cultural stuff around London.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's get on with the discussion. And today's question was actually put together by the young people who helped develop this program, which is, I think, really important. And so, as I said, just to remind you, what we're going to be discussing is how we build a culture of tolerance, equality, and anti-discrimination within London and help to, kind of further our connections and build community. So I'm going to just start off, actually, because I think those are quite sort of big topics, umbrella topics. I want to start by getting kind of everybody on the panel's take on how you'd actually define those topics, because I think it helps. You kind of hear anti-discrimination, you hear tolerance, you hear equality. These can kind of descend into the field of kind of jargon and buzzwords. So I want to understand what those things mean to you. So why don't we start with you, Sanah, if you could just kind of give us a bit of an explainer.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for just highlighting, I guess, the limits of language. I think there is something in the conversations around liberation and seeking liberation where we can fall short with the language that we use. I think it's Maggie Nelson who says, it is idle to fault a net for having holes. Yeah, we will always want to get at something in particular, but not necessarily be able to do that with the means of language. We might not be able to speak to what we really intend to. And I guess with that, just going back to the question of the language of tolerance, there's something in that sets a limitation for me in that question. I don't think that we should be seeking tolerance. I think that we should be seeking liberation, a fuller humanity, cultures of love. And within that, I think is the inclusion of, I guess, anti-discrimination, but more specifically, if we're trying to use language in closer proximity to get to what we're really talking about, is moving away from anti-blackness, Islamophobia, racialization of Muslims. You know, I think we could be doing more to speak to what the specific oppressions are, and the structures of oppression that we're living in.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think a lot of the conversations that have been had, certainly in the past year and certainly since last summer after the Black Lives Matter protests, is that, and this is something that I've kind of done in my writing as well. I wrote this essay, White, and it talks about sometimes the limits of language and how words can very quickly kind of take hold and become widespread, but then nobody really knows what they mean. And the meaning gets, you know, people mean different things. So I think it's really important for us to all just kind of get clear as kind of a starting point what we all mean. How would you interpret those terms, Jonas?
Firstly, with equality, in my opinion, equality is treating everybody equally, but you need to think about what that person needs because everybody needs something different. For example, one of my close, I'm not going to say his name, he won't appreciate me saying it, but one of my best friends, he's dyslexic, right? And I remember in IT GCSE, I'm not going to lie, of course, when I was 14, 15, in IT lessons, you know what boys do, we're going to turn each other's computers off and mess around, play games, all that kind of stuff, right? So our teacher would always be giving him help. And I'd be sitting there, and obviously I'd play games once in a while, but I'd also want to get my GCSEs, right? So I'd be waiting for Miss to come to help me. And then when she's always with him, but then he's messing around, I tell him, why are you messing around all the time when Miss is giving you the most help out of everybody? But in the back of my mind, I knew that he needed it more because of, unfortunately, what's going on for him. So she came and gave me help, but he needed more than most of us. So for me, that's what equality is, because everybody needs different things. When I was 15, I needed something. When I was 17, I needed something different. When I was 19, I now need something different. So all of that is important. And then in regards to tolerance, it's me understanding that he needs that and I need to accept him for who he is. And I always did. That's why me and him are tight to this day. I mean, I never, ever will not be tight with him because he's my brother, all right? So for me, it's understanding that people are different, cultures are different, and you need to be tolerant and understand that it's up to you to educate yourself about that. Don't ask silly questions, because some questions that get asked, like, how do you wash your hair, Jonas? Like, come on, how do you wash your hair? How do you wash your hair? That's how I wash my hair. Same as you, shampoo. It's the same thing. Don't ask questions like that because there's certain things that trigger things racially for people, even sexually for people, and even in terms of disabilities. There's always a lot of triggers for people. So it's understanding that you need to ask questions, but also think before you ask things, because the thing you're asking about could offend people. And for anti-discrimination, I think we all know what discrimination is, and we all know that unfortunately it exists, right? But it's putting your ego to the side and understanding and accepting your unconscious biases. Because I think most of us in this world have unconscious biases, and it's not our fault. It's what the media, society put upon us. It's not our fault. But our responsibility is to prevent us from firstly taking hold of it and holding it, and also projecting it onto others, because there's so many people that don't get opportunities due to this. And if you look at the Equality Act 2010, there's 9 protected characteristics, and it affects every single one of those kind of people. Your gender, your race, whether you're married or not, little things like that, people get discriminated on. And you need to understand that, firstly, you may be doing it and not know about it because you have a certain power and you haven't been challenged on that power yet. But you need to understand that you're not a true leader unless you create more leaders. And to create more leaders, you need to be inclusive for everybody, no matter what race they are, sexuality they are.
Thank you so much. I think that's really helped kind of clarify and kind of brought a lot to the conversation that I hadn't even thought of. I really love what you say about kind of meeting people where they are and understanding that people have different needs. I think, you know, one of the things, again, I'll use race as an example, and I think we're all using race as an example, but often when individuals, even businesses, say, I don't see colour, I'm colourblind, and that is what they see as equality, without recognising that people of different ethnicities face different challenges and might need different things within a workplace, for instance, or within an education context to feel comfortable and to thrive. And so it's not so much about treating everyone the same, but it's, as you said, requiring different people have different needs to then have equality of opportunity. So I really love that you brought that up. And Kelsea, let me come to you. What do you think of this?
So I love what everyone is saying. I love what you talk about, your use of the word or use of language. I always have this strong visceral response to the word tolerance because I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be embraced. I want to be seen in spaces, and I want people to be able to not look at equality and anti-discrimination as buzzwords, but actually doing words. You know, we can't say, I'm working on a production at the moment now, actually, and everyone's always talking about, you know, we love diversity and we're anti-discriminatory, but, you know, when something is presented to you about one of the many intersections of my identity, it's, you know, they freeze because it's got to the point now, especially from the conversation of last year, or this year even, or, you know, I've been organising and running campaigns for years on these type of stuff. But it comes to, there's a wall when it comes to, okay, we're using these words now, and what do these actually mean? We don't know, and we don't know what they mean in action. I know what they mean in action, but, you know, a lot of people around are just using certain words like tolerance and like acceptance or equality, when actually what we want is equity. What we was talking about before is equity. Like, we should throw words like equality in the bin if it just means that people aren't going to be held to account in order to, you know, make places safe for all of us.
Definitely, I agree. And I'm really curious, were you about to jump in there?
Yeah, if that's okay. I was just going to say, it makes me think about how, you know, we don't interrogate language as a tool itself as a means of maintaining and gaining power, you know. And there is something in how language is used often as a distraction and a movement away from what we're actually trying to get to. I love what you said about, I'm not settling for tolerance, you know. I want more than that. And I think sometimes what we risk doing with our use of language is individualizing the issue a little bit. Yeah. How can we use language, again, to repeatedly do the linking back to the conditions that we are living in, the structurally oppressive conditions that are creating this? Because at the end of the day, the colonial project is one that is made to maintain the lie of hierarchy, right? The deeply embedded lie of hierarchy that means that we believe the project of racialization, which is that, sorry, I'm kind of veering off a bit here, but I'm sharing this from the basis that race is a social construct that was curated to make us believe that people who present as white are superior and everyone else is inferior, right? And this is a structural project which is reinforced in society repeatedly over and over and over again. And we need to use language to get to that, you know, to get to also thinking about what are the structures of accountability within these conditions that hold us to acting more lovingly and to act towards liberation, you know? Yeah.
Totally, I think you're so right. I think this is a conversation that has been, you know, kind of popping up more in recent years and within kind of cultural discourse, is how can we look at the issues that we might individually face on an individual basis and understand how that intersects with other people's kind of oppressions, and also realizing that what I need to do to kind of be free and to kind of suffer less discrimination will also help other people. We need to be looking at, it's not just about one person, you know, breaking a glass ceiling and rising to the top. It's also about what we can do collectively. And I think that move away from individualism to collectivism is probably one of the most profound shifts that I've noticed in the past couple of years. But I just want to very quickly throw things out to the audience before we move on to the next stage. I wonder if anybody has anything to say about what they see, you know, the meaning of tolerance, if that's even a word that you like using, whether any of these words we have used kind of resonate with you or confuse you. I'd love to hear, you know, if there's anyone in the audience who wants to chip in at this point, or are we all feeling a bit shy? Okay, we'll move on, but I will be coming back to you to ask questions, so do be prepared. I think something that I find particularly, and I've grown up in London my entire life. I've lived here since I was 5. And I often think, oh my God, moving to London, especially as an adult, must be really difficult. Because there are even times where I have felt lonely and I have felt a lack of community around me. And I think I've worked really hard to kind of foster that sense of community. But, you know, I think that can be something that's really challenging to find all over the world, but especially in bigger cities like London. And also for younger people when you haven't kind of been through all these stages of life. I think one of the reasons that I've kind of found a bit of community now is because I have become a bit older and I've kind of had more time to build one. But I'd love to know, what do you think the main challenges are to finding community and building community and to kind of having that interdependence between us within within modern society are. What does everyone think? Jonas, you look like you've got something to say.
Oh man, okay. So I can only speak about my community personally, the Black community, who I'm extremely proud of and extremely grateful to be a part of. But I feel that, and trigger warning, but I'm gonna say some things I've never said before, but I've told my friends. I feel that although slavery ended, quote, 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 many years ago, it's like mentally a lot of us are still in slavery. I've seen so many times where, as a community, we've refused to help each other, or refused to work together with each other to put ourselves in a better position. And if I look at other communities, other groups like the Jewish community, the Asian community, they work together so well. And it's like with us, it's like when you see one Black person doing well, you got to bring them down. It's a crabs in a bucket mentality. And I feel that holds us back so much, because even if you look at slavery, I'm sure when there were slaves that were running away, there'd be other slaves that worked with them that would say, oh, this slave's run away. They catch them, beat them, all that kind of stuff like that, right? And similar things happen, not obviously on that magnitude, but unfortunately, I've experienced the fact that even people that didn't even like me when I was younger, they see me do certain things, and they'll call my phone or make rumors about me saying, oh, Jonas is this, Jonas is that. But it's like, when I got hit by a car, you weren't there. You were laughing behind my back, but you weren't there. When I got jumped because you guys set me up in beef that I wasn't even involved in, it was your beef, you laughed at me. You didn't help me. And I think a lot of people in our community are like that. And obviously that's my experience, but I've heard other people that I know who I speak to quite a lot that are older than me who say similar things that our community has done to each other. And it turns into something where one person might have a hatred for another person, and then that's how it turns into gang violence and all that kind of stuff. It's all a cycle. And I feel that if we're really going to aid each other for the better, then we need to ensure that we're not just helping our community, but we're helping everybody in general. Not looking at color or looking at gender first, but thinking, how am I going to be a positive beacon for society? Because the world's unfortunately not in the best state right now, but all we can look to do is have the goal to make it better. And if we're going to make it better, then we need to start within, because if you want to be successful or any...
I appreciate you sharing your experience, because that is a difficult thing to kind of talk about and to share. And I don't know, I'd love to, I wonder whether you feel like you kind of understand why that mentality that you've personally encountered might be inculcated, because I think this is a thing that, regardless of what communities, I think often there can be kind of infighting and hierarchy within communities, and it's about that kind of proximity to power. And I also feel, I think about this in the context, often, it's perceived that women, are necessarily catty towards each other in the workplace and they can't work well together. And sometimes I think that's because women are often told, and we get the message, and sometimes it is the case, that out of 12 seats at the table, only one of them is for women, and that necessarily kind of fosters a bit of competition between, and it's not uniformly the case. I think some of the most fulfilling and productive and enriching professional relationships I've had have certainly been with other women. But kind of talking about this, I guess that it's about conflict and intra-community conflict and competition. I wonder why those dynamics sometimes arise. Is that something that you've encountered in your work?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of depth to this issue that we can get into. I think there's a few things that I'd like to name here. One is that we reinforce what we witness and what we're exposed to, right? We are repeatedly in conditions that perpetuate individualism, ruthless individualism. We live in a capitalist society which encourages us all to adopt the myth of survival of the fittest, and with that means that we inadvertently see others as a threat to us, okay? Of course we're going to do that because these are the conditions that we are in. So we learn to do that and we perpetuate those behaviors.
We're encouraged to do
we haven't really witnessed loving community. It's actually very rare that we've been part of loving communities that are really practiced in interdependence, in being able to move away from ruthless individualism, okay? I think that we can think about this in the context of systemic whiteness too, that if we recognize this as a structural issue, not an individual one, how it operates within every single one of us, yeah? The most extreme example, we have had Tony Sewell come up as a black man telling us that institutional racism doesn't exist, okay? And it's a very painful reality, but we are all trying to survive, okay? And I think it's Bell Hooks that talks about this means of survival means that often the oppressed people can become oppressors. Mm-hmm. And this is a really painful and difficult thing to speak to in our own communities, because when we are already in places of oppression, to go out and call our own as bad is a very, of course, we're all very reluctant to do that. But it is the reality that the oppressor, when we have been oppressed so repeatedly, can operate within us, and we can take on those roles. But I just wanted to just pick up on the language of conflict, because I think it's really important. You named conflict. When it comes to this work of liberation, I think that we can be very fearful of what conflict means, and actually a place of a lot of generativity is often ones of tension and conflict.
I was about to say it can be productive.
Yeah, hugely, very transformative.
I think something that I've kind of really thought about in the past couple of years, especially with my kind of writing work, is that conflict doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing in the sense that critique and being able to kind of interact with each other's ideas, as you say, it can be very generative, because I think we all kind of shy away from it and think of it as inherently a negative sort of idea. But I think within certain parameters, and I guess when there is a kind of mutual respect, or even, to be honest, when there isn't, because it can kind of force you to re-examine your ideas and maybe your own prejudices and your own blind spots. So I definitely agree with you that conflict is a word that isn't 100% negative.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely. I can't remember who said it, but it's something like, the quote is, conflict is the spirit of the relationship, asking it to deepen. Asking us to show up more wholly as ourselves, and actually naming what we need. And sometimes the stickiness of that is being able to speak to these really complex issues of oppression, of the ways that we are harming each other, and being able to then move towards a place of transformation through that radical honesty.
Yeah, no, totally hear you. I'm going to move. I feel like we could be talking about this all afternoon, but I'm going to move. I mean, Kelsea, did you want to jump in there and say anything?
No, I'll jump in the next one.
Okay, all right, because I wanted to talk a bit about the communities that we have found.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hear your experiences. And because I think I said this, it was a couple of months ago, and I think I was, I had like a book out, or I don't know what it was, but I was just dealing with a lot in a kind of professional way. And I remember for the first time reflecting, thinking, oh my God, I'm so glad I have the community that I have. I think my friends were also doing really cool things, like professional contacts, and I just suddenly felt this moment. I think it was kind of the first time in my life that I'd really thought, I was like, oh, I have a community, I have people around me. And that was a really beautiful thing. And I think I've found that a lot through my work, through my work as a writer, and the people that I've met within publishing, within media, and I've met other writers kind of doing similar things to me, and then their friends, and their friends' friends. So I've been really lucky to find that through my work. But I'd love to know, what communities do you guys consider yourselves to be part of that have really kind of helped you on your journey and continue to help you? Why don't we start with you, Kelsea?
Yeah, I'm thinking. I think I'm a bit similar to you, where like the communities that hold me the strongest probably came about through work. So I've done a lot of campaigning with the peer outreach team, but also with other kind of Black and brown organisations. And there are places probably where I've had the most conflict, but also at the same time have embraced my many identities for what they are when they see it come out, especially as it comes out in my work. I think it's funny because your initial question, or the question before, was like, why is it so difficult to find communities? When I look at the intersections of my life, so I'm like a Black, queer, working class person who's also neurodivergent, and I can go and seek those communities, but sometimes with this whole individualistic nature of communities, it's not really sustainable for my life to just go, I'm going to go with you guys because you tick this box and you tick that box. But I find the places that can sometimes accept me for who I am, and also that I feel most supported, probably come through work. And in this new digital age, one of the things that I've kind of explored in the past year with my research, Gen Z millennials are finding this whole community online and are considered like a global identity, and seeing how so much of my community has come off from the internet or digital spaces has been something that's managed to where I've managed to find some sort of community. However, at the same time, I always challenge when we talk about the Black community or, you know, any form of community to always pluralize it, because like there isn't one Black community, there isn't one queer community. There's like so many different subsections of every single protected characteristic, and like we must keep talking about those nuances in order to find a place that can house all of us, all of ourselves, if that makes sense.
I love that specificity, and I feel like that's definitely something I'm going to adopt, because I think I find myself saying the Black community, but you're completely right. There are multiple Black communities. And also, you know, something that I do challenge is when people assume that whatever community it is, that we all kind of have a homogenous, you know, school of thought. So I did an event a couple of, like last week, where we were talking about kind of pay inequality, ethnicity and pay inequality. And somebody, you know, in the audience asked a question, well, what would you say if, you know, a Black woman who's risen to the top and is a CEO says that she doesn't believe in kind of gender discrimination? I was like, that's kind of, you know, obviously I would challenge it, but just because she's Black doesn't mean that she's going to think the same thing that I think. Just because she's a Black woman doesn't mean that she's going to think the same thing that I think as a result of my identity and a result of my gender and my race. So I think it's really important that we understand the kind of plurality of these different communities, and the fact that there isn't, you know, one, you know, view, one, you know, perspective from people who occupy those spaces. So I love that you've brought that up. How about you, Jonas?
One of my quotes, let me just start off. One of my quotes are, every day should be seen as a step closer to wherever you want to be in life. And for me personally, I'm going to tell you the truth. In school, I got in trouble quite a lot, and I get cussed quite a lot. So I'd have to obviously say, oh, I cussed them back, and obviously I'd do it worse so that it wouldn't come back. But then I got the reputation of a bully because I wanted to back myself. And I grew up in a single parent household with my mother, but my grandmother did live with me until I was in year 8. But my mum sent me to a mentoring organization called the 100 Black Men of London. So right there, because I used to get called Blick a lot of dark skin jokes, all that kind of stuff. Right? I got a lot of colorism. It was like, when I went in there, it was like, nah, being Black is lit. So it was like, wow, everyone, I've never been called Blick here once, because I used to think to myself every day, hopefully today I don't get called Blick. And I actually had, like, I used to count, oh, it's been 3 days and stuff like that. But at the 100 Black Men of London, we're all a family and we're all supporting each other and all that kind of stuff. And that's where I really learned the fact that as a community, we need to become together more, because so many of us want to do different things. But as you said there, as I just learned on this panel, see, I'm learning stuff on this panel. There's different subsections of our community, and most communities in the protected characteristics. And that was a community that I made, and I'm so proud that I'm still a part of it to this day, because of them, I had a childhood dream to go to America because I was a basketball fan. I didn't grow up in the best financial situation. I was lucky enough to go to Grenada quite a few times though, but I had a dream to go to America. I went to America because of them. And when I went to America, my mindset shifted. Without that shift, I don't know where I'd be today, but that's what really made me the man I am today. And I'm proud to still be a member of the community, still being a mentor to their young people now. So that was how I found the community there. And even nowadays, that just reminded me, the Gen Zers that I've met since I turned 17 are astronomical. They're sensational. And the fact that I found a community with them too, and we go out together, we go out to restaurants, we go and play bingo. We even played bingo. People can laugh. We played bingo, teenagers playing bingo, but we played bingo together and stuff like that is so important, because as I told you before we came on here, before lockdown, I was the most introverted introvert you would ever meet. I was always at my house playing PlayStation, playing Football Manager. Real ones know Football Manager is better than FIFA. Playing Football Manager, all that kind of stuff. But then lockdown's over and it's like, okay, today I'm going to a restaurant. Obviously budget myself. Today I'm going to a restaurant. Tomorrow I'm going to the theatre. Today I'm going to the cinema. All this kind of stuff's really important, because I never used to do that when I was younger. When I first started working, it was all stack my money, stack my money, stack my money. But go.
I'm just astounded. You're so much more advanced than I ever was at your age. Like, I don't know what I was doing when I was 19, but it certainly wasn't sitting on panels and just sharing wisdom. And like, I really, just on a personal note, just really love that you did find that community. And yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm really glad. It made me feel a bit emotional.
Thank you.
Sanah, I'm just going to turn to you. What's like, where have you found your community?
Yeah, I find this question a bit tricky, just because I think I'm still growing in my understanding of what community really means. And I think it's a term that's often pedestaled and is thrown around a lot. And I don't and we talked about, already, I think it was Kelsey named the diversity in that term and just how much depth and nuance there is in it. So I guess underneath it, what I understand the values of community to be are interdependence, being able to show up in your whole self and meet others similarly too. And I think there's something as well about, which I named earlier, about structures of accountability, the people that can hold you accountable to growth and vice versa. I think I have it in pockets, and it's building. I've come from, I guess, a Pakistani upbringing where my experiences of community were at times quite oppressive. So I've had to really be on my journey of repeatedly redefining that and also managing expectations, because when I first went into the queer community, I was like, oh my days, family, yeah? And just went with my heart wide open and really, really just pedestaling the whole thing. But of course, there are so many traumatized people in those spaces. So cycles of exile can repeat themselves. We will always, I think, this is something I'm still reflecting on a lot, is I don't think we can ever shake the feelings of unbelonging that come with being marginalized or racialized. There is something about being able to hold the hand of unbelonging in the places that you go with compassion that you can never, it's the whole thing about kind of safe spaces. It's a very unachievable ideal for many of us, but we can have brave and compassionate spaces. This is a long, just roundabout way of saying, I don't know.
Honestly, thank you for your honesty in that sense. And I think it is, it's good to kind of have that nuance in considering it, because not everyone feels like they've found their community. And I can definitely think of a lot of times over the course of my 20s where I felt very, very lonely and very, very misunderstood and didn't feel like I had, one person who a single person who I could like reach out to and talk about those feelings with. So it's definitely like a work in progress. And also these things are in flux. People's lives change, people come in and out of your lives. So I think it's definitely something, I think it's just kind of doing the kind of active work of building it and nurturing those relationships. That's something that I'm a lot better at doing now. And I think about much more actively is how I kind of nurture the relationships I have around me. But I want to move on slightly and talk a bit about, the kind of some of the issues that we've been talking about. I used to work in advertising, which was not particularly tolerant or inclusive, or there were a lot of isms going on. And, I now, I guess, in a way, as a writer, kind of work in publishing within media, and those are the worlds I encounter. So those are the kind of industries that I have experience of and the kind of institutions that I have experience of. What can businesses and institutions, whether academic or in a more commercial way, what can they be doing to kind of foster more inclusive, we're not using the word tolerant, we're using the word embracing, and also kind of to challenge discrimination in much more robust ways. I mean, Kelsea, why don't we start with you? What are your thoughts?
I have so many thoughts. I'm trying to organise them in my head.
And be honest as well, because I think we need, this is a topic that gets sugarcoated a lot, and I really want that kind of honesty.
So obviously I work in a few different sectors. So I work in kind of policy sector, community sector, and recently the performing arts. Performing arts world is mad. Theatre world, mad. And I think one of the things that pops up in all of them is, one, sometimes I think get rid of your anti-racism training. Like, just get rid of it, because if you're not going to do it properly, don't bother do it. And I don't know why I said, the reason why I say get rid of it is because unless it's telling people that you can go to a short-term course, tick a box and you'll be fine, and then come out with some really outlandish shit afterwards, excuse my language. But like, not one of the things, wait, I'm trying to organise my thoughts again. I think there needs to be something from the higher ups to say that there's no place for intentional ignorance. There is no place for there's no base for conscious bias, and there is no place for like this, I want to say white tears. That's what I want to say, really, if we're talking about it in a racialized context. But there's no place for when somebody tells you something is wrong for the response to be tears, even though we can
defensiveness.
Yes, defensiveness. That's the word I'm looking for. And this is the issue that I have in so many of the different sectors or projects that I work with, is when you say something isn't right or something is not making you feel safe, for it to be responded with tears all the time, and then, you know, the usual response is that you're being disruptive, Kelsea, you're being aggressive, Kelsea. It's like, if you want me to show you aggression, I will do. Me using my years of knowledge and research and what I do as a practice kind of in my work, and this is something that I'm experiencing a lot in theatre. Like, I have this whole background in the community organising stuff and being engaged with certain discourse. So if I come into a room and I'm saying, actually, what you're saying is like microaggressive towards me, whether that's race or very much recently in the theatre world, it's been my working class background. When I turn around and say, this is what it is, for you to then respond is, oh, you're getting upset or you're being really aggressive, Kelsea, it's just really counterproductive. And it's always, oh yes, you're so aggressive. Oh, we're so sorry you hurt your feelings. It's like, it's not about my feelings. I'm telling you what you're doing is wrong and it's unsafe, and it's not really accepting of not just my own personal identity, but people with different, you know, marginalized experiences and stuff. But yeah, I'm rambling, so I'm gonna.
No. I think there's something really valuable in there, in what you said about how these changes need to come from the higher ups and be modelled by senior management. Like, you know, what's that saying? The fish rots from the head.
Yeah.
You know, and I think definitely when I used to work in a 9 to 5, when I used to work in offices, these attitudes came from the top and were kind of made okay from the top. So I do think there needs to be kind of scrutiny at a management level.
Have you heard of reverse mentoring?
Yes, I have.
Like, what the hell is reverse mentoring? Like, when people...
So you don't think that's effective?
I don't think calling it reverse mentoring is effective, because then you're almost saying, like, actually what you're saying is these people with this lived experiences, which is actually of value, is like I don't know how to explain.
Do you think it's a language problem?
It's a weird language thing to say reverse mentoring. Actually, I'm mentoring you on stuff you don't know about. Like,
I think it's like a lot of this stuff happens with age as well. It's like backhanded compliments.
It's like in the youth sector especially. So like, you come on here and you are an expert by experience. I shouldn't be seeing you like, oh, I'm actually learning from young people and stuff. It's like, I should be learning from just a person.
Yeah.
And these weird words we attach to things, and like especially youth policy sector or just community sector is really guilty of this, where they put someone, they have someone speak about something with their lived experience and then don't bother like credit them as being a valuable source or a valuable, you know, professional or anything like that.
That's so true. I think it kind of instantly sets up a power hierarchy and dynamic, which shouldn't be the case. If you're an expert, whether you're young or old or, you know, whatever race or identity you are. So I think that's really important. Jonas, what do you think? What do businesses and organisations need to be doing better?
Okay. So for me personally, I started working when I was 17 in a 9 to 5. So I left college in year 12 and I did an apprenticeship, which I'm very grateful for. And for me personally, it's, again, there's so many, even me doing what I do now, there's so many backhanded compliments that we get. So, for example, people will say, like, I call people kings and queens, right, to big them up. Some people will say, oh, Jonas, you're a young king. I'm like, what do you mean young? Why do you need to put the word young in there? It's like you saying, oh, you're good, but you're not at my level yet. And it's like, when was I ever competing with you? I think even one of my friends, he's at 33 right now, he used to mentor me actually, but now we're tight again. He used to work and he did the same thing as me. And his manager asked him, and this is like 2006, 2005, his manager asked him, where do you want to be when you're my age? And guess what he said? He said, where you're sitting. Guess who was out the door?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's that kind of...
There's so many things that affect, because I spoke about race earlier, but now I want to talk about age. There's so many things that affect us young people in the working environment, which causes us to have imposter syndrome, which causes us to have to code switch. Because when I'm working sometimes, like I'm from South London, I'm not going to conform and not use slang just because you don't want me to use slang, especially when I'm with my colleagues. If I'm with people, if I'm with customers, that's different. If I'm with colleagues who are from the same area as me, I'm not going to be using, oh, wow, I'm not going to be using those kind of words, am I? I'm going to speak how I speak. I'm going to say, oh, yeah, fam, that's mad. Or, oh, there's bare stuff over there. Yo, I'll say that.
It's about allowing people to be themselves in the workplace.
Exactly.
And I think code switching is, you know, it's something that I've had to do. And I think unless you kind of conform to a very kind of narrow identity, which tends to be white, middle class, often male, cis, then you do find yourself having to kind of change. And it's a heavy mental burden to carry. And I definitely kind of struggled with that when I was still working in offices. But yeah, sorry, I did interrupt. You were saying.
Oh, no, that was good. Thank you.
Okay.
It was good what you said. It was good what you said.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, it's I don't want to lose the man that I am, because I'm the same Jonas I was when I was a baby. I'm the same Jonas I was when I was in primary school. I'm the same Jonas I was when I was in secondary school. Yes, my mindset has shifted and I've evolved as a man, but I'm not going to become successful, become a millionaire, be financially free, reach my goal of being the most impactful public speaker in the world. I'm not going to do that and then forget who I am, forget where I came from, because it's all about bringing forward, not giving back. Because so many people, again, say, oh, I want to give back. But again, that's a backhanded insult, because you're saying, oh, I'm ahead of you, I'm going to give back, but you're going to stay there. I want to be somewhere, but say, I'm not in front of you, but I'm going to bring you forward, because I don't want you to just be good. I want you to be better than me. A lot of my mentees, I'll tell them, look, and this is what my mentor told me, so now I'm like, I need to say this to my mentors too, mentees, and believe it, if my mentees aren't 19 and doing better than I am, I failed them. They didn't fail, I failed them. Because I had the knowledge and tools to allow them to get to a certain point. And the fact that they haven't surpassed me by the time they're my age, I clearly did something wrong. So I need to take heed of that. But a lot of people in the working environment will see young people and just blame them for stuff, but they're fresh out of school. They're fresh out of uni. There's certain habits that they need to break. Some of them are still going through puberty a bit. They're still getting used to themselves. And remember, school is character building, so they're still finding who they are as people. So I think that a lot of people need to actually put time into young people, because I know when I was working, people didn't really put time into me, but I would get the blame for it all the time. But I think that's really important for us. And again, it will build confidence within young people too, because I think, not as a whole, but quite a few of us, I'm not going to say everyone and generalize, but a lot of us have confidence issues. I know I did when I was younger. I had a lot of confidence issues, but I'm lucky enough that I now have confidence. But I want to ensure that all young people have confidence and believe in themselves, because we can, as people in general, everyone, no matter what age, race, all of that kind of stuff, achieve greatness.
Thank you. It's very inspiring. Very noble of you as well, Jonas. I've got probably time for one more question with the panel, and then I am going to open things out to the floor. So I'm just giving you a little bit of advance notice. So, get thinking on those questions, think of them. But I am going to ask just one more question to our panelists, because we've kind of talked about, I guess, different failings and different issues and problems within these spaces over the past kind of hour or so. But I do want to try and end on a slightly more positive note and think about, who are, in your view, I'd love to get some examples so that we can kind of go and look them up afterwards and kind of get involved with them. Who are the organisations, or what are the social movements in the UK that are doing this work of furthering inclusion and anti-discrimination? Who do you think is doing really well in that space, and what do you think we can learn from them? So maybe I'll start with you, Sanah. Have you got any ideas?
There's a lot of really great work happening at the moment. I think I'm really interested in the work that Forefront are doing. I don't know if people are familiar with Forefront, which is basically an incredible young person called Temi, taking a transformative justice approach to creating community, really doing the work of community around young marginalised people, so that if harm is committed, how can they still be held in community and supported towards transformation, rather than pushed towards a criminal justice system, which is repeatedly failing them, and we know that very much so, what's happening in the world at the moment right now. It's becoming increasingly clear that, abolitionism is the place that we need to move towards, and that we can't rely on the police system for any kind of justice. And I think it links really, really, really in a way back to this conversation around community, and what community means is, how can we help each other grow? How can we love each other into growth? And the work of that takes a lot of work. So I really am very inspired by Temi and the work that Forefront are doing. So that's one organisation. Just to name drop a couple: Inclusive Mosque Initiative, which is building communities for queer Muslims, and an inclusive space for prayer, for community, is another. So those are just a couple Because I'm sure you guys have got...
No, I'm really fascinated. I'm definitely going to look at Forefront, because I think there have been so many conversations lately, you say, about abolition, but also what a justice system looks about that isn't purely carceral, isn't necessarily about, isn't punitive, but is also about rehabilitation and community, as you say, and finding alternative ways of seeking justice that aren't about demonizing individuals and are about allowing them to one day, kind of to, I suppose, I don't know the word, not to atone, but for what they've done, to not eliminate them from society in general and to not have that carried around with them. And it's about kind of allowing them to kind of understand the issues with what they've done, kind of reintegrate into society in a way that doesn't leave them out in the cold for the rest of their lives. So I think that's really important. I'm definitely going to look that up. What do you guys, any organisations that you guys would recommend? Jonas, let's go from you.
Jonas, you go first.
Thank you. Wait, ladies first.
No, I'm not a lady.
Cool. Okay, so firstly, I'd say Partnership for Young London, of course. Thanks to them, I'm here. So big up to them. They're doing amazing work for us and giving us the opportunities and putting us young people in positions to become leaders, because, again, I can speak for myself. I'm not perfect. Never have been perfect. Never will be perfect. I'm pretty sure when I was younger, I started a couple arguments when I was younger. Of course, I'm not perfect, but this is allowing us to ensure that we can guide young people into becoming the leaders that we know they can be and putting them in positions to aid London in general as a whole, especially up for us young people. So that's a really amazing organisation. The second one is my boy. He's I'm not gonna say, he doesn't like me saying his age, but my boy, he's older. Another one that's quite older than me, Lewis Howe. He runs a company called. Did this just get louder? Okay, sorry. Yeah, my friend Lewis Howe. He runs a diversity and inclusion consultancy called 7PK Tribe, and he does quite a lot of work in areas with housing associations, all this kind of stuff, to aid young people to become better. Not that they're bad in any way, but to become better than they was yesterday. So that's an amazing organisation too that people should check out. And again, I don't need to say anything more because I've spoken about them already. The place that mentored me, the 100 Black Men of London, doing great stuff for young Londoners. Us men are stepping forward and the women are stepping forward too as volunteers. And yeah, those three are just organisations that I admire so much, and I think that everyone should have a look at.
Thank you. And what about you, Kelsea?
So thanks for the shout out, Jonas, because I do research at Partnership for Young London. And it's funny because I'm about to run a series of kind of stuff on radicalism and how to get rid of like some of these young people's labels, which is totally going against the organisation, but also isn't. But it's an accepting place, which is why I can explore getting rid of this. Yeah, anyway, I digress. One organisation that I really love is called the Belay Initiative. They are slowly, I want to say slowly, but quite quickly, almost becoming a national charity, kind of doing a lot of work around Black and brown communities. I've been a community member of theirs for a few years now. Earlier in this year, I ended up, they're really supportive as an organisation where you have an idea as a community member and they're like, how do we support you? One example would be I ran a campaign around Black and brown people and the disproportionality of COVID. We did loads of work with them around that. And also, I guess part of the event organisers today would be the Mayor of London's peer outreach team, which has a really interesting model of hiring young people to go out and do engagement work with other young people, giving them paid opportunities to go and run things and do research and have it say and take parts of events like this. But yeah, there's so many. I feel really bad. I
think we've all got plenty to be working with there, and I think everyone's probably going to go and look into them after this. I'm just going to reach out into the audience and see if anyone's got a question. Don't be shy. This is very much, like an open, safe space. All questions are good questions. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to ask, or even just say, just a comment? Hands up. Come on. Must be one. This lady here. Thank you.
I don't really have a question, to be very honest, but I think I should just comment because there was a space to comment. But yeah, I think going back to the first thing you had said about what does tolerance mean to you and anti-discrimination, and what you were saying, Kelsea and Sanah as well, about just having living multiple realities at the same time, living in an intersection. I'm a queer Black woman, and in all those three spaces, I guess all my other communities feel like they need to tolerate me. Like, I'm queer, so if I'm in a African space, it's seen I'm being tolerated there, or if I'm in a white space, I'm being tolerated there. And I think that, yeah, we definitely need to find more ways of embracing different things to us, as opposed to thinking that we just need to tolerate people. I think in terms of community as well, community when you live in an intersection is difficult because you are all you have. So like, even you guys naming all these communities, someone like me, I genuinely find it hard. Like, it goes in one ear and out the other when people talk about organizations, because I always just feel like there isn't really going to be a space for me there. I think that people, young people, older people, whatever the case is, need to just be more involved in building around themselves and creating things that they want to see and be a part of, because, yeah, otherwise we just fail each other by not doing enough. And also what you were saying about, like, you feel like in the Black community, people hold each other back. Like, I feel like in my intersections, I feel that in every part, like, queer people feel like they're holding each other back. Black people feel like they're holding each other back. Women feeling like they're holding each other back. But like you were saying, it's the book of colonization. It's white supremacy acting against all of us and making us all feel the smallest and the most attacked. Where, yeah, I think that what you were saying was very important. We need ways of understanding that this is a collective problem, and actually we are all just being attacked by the same beast. And the language has to be like, how can we really face that, as opposed to, I don't know, like thinking super individually. That's my commentary.
Thank you, that's really insightful, and yeah, thank you so much for contributing. And I think I wanted to pick up on something you just said about building their own community, because I completely forgot when I was talking about the fact that I do feel like I have a community that these days much more than I used to. It is actually because I started and ran a community from 2016 to 2020, which was called Women Who, and it was for creative working women. And that is almost, you know, the connections I made there and the work that I did there is almost entirely responsible for not just the career I have now, but also a lot of the connections that I have since. And so, you know, it doesn't have to be something big or formalized. And I know that there are so many demands on people's time, but I think there is so much to be said for, I felt like I had no connections, no community when I started running that. And I genuinely was like, who's going to want to be involved? And I was so blown away by the number of people who essentially felt similarly and gravitated towards it. So I think there is a lot to be said about starting your own communities and just kind of reaching out and not necessarily looking to see, is there anything that suits me, and being like, I don't see myself there, I don't see myself there. Then it's like, okay, well, let me start something that's specific to me. And hopefully, and I think people will almost always gravitate towards that. But I think your friend wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, today I've just a lot been thinking about this analogy of that's £20 and I take £17 and I give you £2 and I give you £1 and I go, look, they've got twice as much as you. And I just leave you lot and run off with the £17. Mm-hmm. And I just, so like a lot of the time I feel like it's compassion for those communities, for infighting, because it's a trick. It's a trick. The whole thing has been set up for that. And that is the whole point of oppression and the whole point of marginalization. And I just kind of, going back to what you were saying about what can businesses do, like, I feel like the onus for the oppressed to solve the problems that the oppressors, like that is a huge pressure. And going back to that analogy of the £17 and the $2, rather than somebody with £2 and somebody £1 trying to work out how to get £17 back and like, what if we actually placed value on something else? So however many pounds lost its value. And actually kindness, a skill that you can actually work on, or something else had the value, so that we're not just kind of running around in circles trying to fight, because the £17 person is not going to ever want to give up that £17. And the one with £2 and the one with £1 is never going to agree. And I just don't know how we can get out of this mess unless we just start placing less value on the pounds in itself. And that's just something that I kept thinking about, like, yeah, with everything that's been discussed today.
Thank you. I think that's a really powerful analogy.
So can I literally say one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Just based on World Mental Health Day, just to say that also, just like in this system that we actually live in, that happens, if anybody's mental health was like 100%, they're not okay. Doesn't, like, we live in a system that you can't, I don't think that you can be mentally healthy and like live here. I don't know if other people agree, but I don't think so. I think that there's too much injustice ingrained in the system. In
and overstimulation as well, I often think.
Sorry, say that again.
Overstimulation, I often think as well.
Way too much injustice and way too much overstimulation, showing us the injustice and expecting us to be okay every day. So I think that that's something else that businesses have to, or I don't know about businesses, but people en masse need to know. It's just that, like, it's okay to not be okay in this system because the system doesn't actually work for any of us. So like you were saying, how can we shift our focus so that we're focusing on things that create a system that people can actually be okay in and can be mentally healthy in, more so than trying to figure out, okay, we live in this horrific place. How do we all pretend to be okay in it? Because I think that a lot of these buzzwords we use and a lot of things that happen, we're doing that as opposed to the prior.
Brilliant, thank you.
Can I just say one piece really quickly, just because I think it feels really important about World Mental Health Day, just that actually this is so important, this piece, that we are suffering in response to the conditions that we are living in. Of course we are suffering because there is racism, there is homophobia, there is transphobia, these are responses to the conditions we live in, okay? Right now, we have a mental health system that repeatedly reinforces the lie that our mental health is tied up to our individual brains, okay? If there is something wrong, it is because of your biochemistry or your unhelpful cognition, okay? And the way for you to seek any relief from that is to either take a pill or go and see a therapist and go and fix yourself. Go away over there so we don't have to deal with it. Get better and then come back, okay? Rather than, to me, the most transformative way of understanding therapy is actually transforming the conditions that are causing our distress, okay? So I think we really need to redefine our understanding of what is therapeutic, what is causing our suffering, and the ways that we respond to that is very much, respond to that needs to be about what we look towards, which is what is happening to us to make us feel this way.
Definitely. I think it's important, though, that we hold those two things in tandem. And, you know, I think for a lot of people, therapy, talking therapy and pills, whether they're antidepressants, can also be really helpful. I personally know a lot of people who found that to be helpful. But I totally take your point that it's important that we look at the bigger structural issues as well and see what we can kind of do on a larger scale and understanding the context of our feelings or our mental health struggles, whilst also seeking the remedies that we can in the kind of within a kind of smaller context, essentially.
Definitely. I mean, we're using the tools that we're given. And right now, our toolbox is a little bit small.
Yes.
And our toolbox is one of medication, of the language of disorder, of diagnosis. But I think we can envision something bigger.
Totally. I think that might be all we have time for today. We're running slightly over. Thank you so much to our brilliant panelists. This has been the most mind-blowing and really thought-provoking panel. So thank you all so much for your contributions. And thank you guys as well in the audience for your questions and your comments. And yeah, this has been a brilliant discussion for Never Alone London. Speak It. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.